Welcome back to Nature Labs and our coverage of the Federal Liberal Leadership Convention, in which we know who the winner of the leadership race is and who will be the next Prime Minister of Canada, and that is Mark Carney. Mark Carney, of course, went into this race as one of the two co-favorites, the heavyweight, if you will, in this battle, along with former Deputy Prime Minister and former Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland. But in the end, it was Mark Carney's night. It was Mark Carney's race. He was the leader in projected polls going into this race, and of course, tonight, he succeeded. He succeeded with more than 85% of all votes and points tabulated through the Liberal leadership race process. Of course, you understand that process better after we shared that video at the beginning of this evening. Mark Carney's 85% victory is a massive number. That's a clear mandate showing that he was able to unite the Liberal Party behind his candidacy, which means the party as a whole will be able to go into the next federal election with a united front in the face of a daunting task. Certainly any government who's been in power for as long as the Liberals means that the chances they have at getting re-elected will be difficult. Certainly, as we discussed earlier tonight, the unpopularity of outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had taken the Liberal vote to a place that looked like they would be collapsing in the House of Commons, maybe even to a status that hasn't been seen since Justin Trudeau won a leadership race just like tonight. But with Mark Carney, the polls say that the race next will be very, very close. And who will form the next government, while the Conservatives still lead, is very much up for grabs. And a victory like the one that Mark Carney's had tonight means that the Liberals will have a much stronger chance of getting their supporter base united, and that includes being able to knock on doors, raise money, and get out the vote efforts, which are a huge part of any kind of electoral efforts. Mark Carney will give the Liberals a real chance of being able to continue in government whenever that next election is called. Of course, what happens next is very much an open question. There will be a transition period. We don't know exactly when Mark Carney will be sworn in as Prime Minister, but we know that he will be sworn in soon, and he will officially become Canada's next Prime Minister. At that point, he'll have a choice. He can go to the Governor-General and dissolve Parliament, even yes, that if it's prorogued at the moment, and call the federal election immediately, before the House reconvenes after prorogation ends on the end of this month. But, of course, if he chooses to stay on as Prime Minister right now, he could, of course, negotiate with opposition parties, including the NDP and Bloc Québécois, and find a way to stay in power for a few more months before the federal election must be called in the fall. Most likely, though, the House will reconvene towards the end of the month after prorogation ends, and the government will put forward a throne speech, basically outlining their vision for government, what will essentially set up the election campaign. Because, of course, all opposition parties, at least at this moment, have promised to bring down the government at the first possible opportunity, likely the throne speech or in subsequent budget bills, one of which will be a confidence vote. And again, if the parties are to believe, the opposition parties that is, the government will collapse, an election will be called, and we'll be into a race with a vote happening either in late April or early May. So a lot of the specifics of what happens next will become more clear in the days to come. But what is clear tonight, Mark Carney will be the next Prime Minister. He is the leader of the Liberal Party with a massive mandate. That gives him incredible power to shape the Liberal Party behind his vision, one that he's promised to be pro-economy, that will help Canada protect its sovereignty in the face of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. Of course, whether that message resonates with every Canadian from coast to coast to coast, that remains to be seen, which is why we'll see it probably play out in a federal election campaign against his chief opponent, Pierre Poilievre and the federal Conservatives, who've had big leads in the polls, but it's certainly shrinking, and it'll be a race to watch. We'll be here every step of the way. We'll be interviewing members of the Conservative and Liberal Party to help break down the issues as the election unfolds. We're certainly going to do our part to ask each of the leaders to sit down with us so we can help have them explain to you their vision for the country so you understand the stakes. Certainly this is an important night, and certainly the nights to come will be equally important as this nation decides on a path forward at a time when our sovereignty is under threat like it never has been before. But for right now, I hope tonight's coverage of the federal Liberal leadership race has helped make this issue just a little bit more clear for you. You understand why the race is democratic and just, why there's been debates about whether a race should happen at a time like this, or whether threats of foreign interference are a concern or not. And we also hope you understand a little bit more about the context of Justin Trudeau's legacy, complicated as both a political party leader and as Prime Minister of the country of Canada. But most of all, we hope you understand the process that led up to the election of Mark Carney, and you understand what the stakes will be going forward as Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre face off to see who will govern the country after the next election.